So one of the most common questions that I get with folks in my Facebook group, email list, clients as well, be they in our courses, in our group programs, even my private one-to-one clients, it's around pricing, and in particular in relation to their own coaching, consulting, course offerings. And a lot of questions pop up around pricing. It's a particularly interesting field. What should I charge? How should I structure the pricing? There's some pretty ninja and cool shit that you can do around pricing strategy. It's an area to spend time investigating and learning. I would highly encourage you to do that. But what I want to talk particularly in this video in relation to pricing is, should you talk about it publicly, or should it be something that is almost kind of secretive and you present it to folks once they've gone through your marketing and your sales process, right? So that they're not focused on the price, right? Essentially, should you put the price up front and it be open and public about it? Or it should be something that you hold closer to your chest, right? And you take folks through a process, and then when they're ready to rock and roll, you present them with the investment and let them decide, okay? What I want to talk to you in this video, we've done both, right? For context, we've done both. We've rolled with strategies where upfront I'll say it's $5,000, right? And there's no, there's no big secret about it. It's out there, it's public. And we've also run funnels that don't talk about price, and we will present the offer to people, then they'll see the price, and it's up to them to decide if, one, it's within their budget, and two, they see the value in it relative to the price, okay? So we've experienced both of these, we've done both of these, and I don't necessarily think one is the absolute and what you should always do. I think there's variables that depend on the individual, the brand, the offer, all these kind of things. But what I want to talk to you about is the pros and cons of each, so that you can weigh it up relative to what you're selling, relative to your brand, and decide which is the better option for you, rather than just listening to someone who says you should always do it this way. I think it's more important that you understand the pros and the cons to each of them. Okay, and that's what I want to talk to you about in this video. All right, so before we jump into it, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel, give the video a like, drop any comments or questions that you've got about this as you go through it. And if you're into content like this, check out the other videos that I've got on the channel, because we've got heaps about selling courses, coaching, consulting, high-ticket affiliate products. Essentially, how do you take your brand, build an audience, and monetize it so that you're landing consistent, 1K, 5K, 10K plus deals every single day. Okay, that's what we're all about. That's what I help my clients with. That's what I'm able to do in my business, and we have a good time doing it. All right. Also, check out the first link in the description if you want to see an example of an offer that we built that did 45K in 11 days. You'll get a feel for the style of how we do things, and you can see if that jives with you, and maybe it's something that you might be interested in rolling into your own business, and we can help you out with that down the track. Okay, so let's talk about this pricing thing. All right, the majority of people in the course coaching consulting market lean more towards, as at the time of filming this, right, markets shift and perspectives change, and I think we are seeing a little bit of a change in the market. But May 2022, at the time I'm filming this, the majority of people still lean more towards price being, I don't know if secret is the right word, but like, they're silent on the price in the marketing. They're silent on the price in the sales process. And then it's a matter of, they get people on the phone. They figure out if someone's a good fit for something or not, or if somebody wants something, and then they present the price at the kind of final point, and then it's up for people to decide. That's the main approach that people take in this game at the time of filming this. Like I said, I think there's a bit of a shift more towards transparency and more towards kind of being open about what your prices are in the market. I'm starting to see that, particularly over the last 12 months, but I think the majority of people still wait until the end, because that's what, I guess, more traditional, kind of the more traditional approach to call funnels and stuff like that has always recommended. But like I said, markets ebb and flow and stuff like that. Okay, so let's start with that, right? Given that's the common thing, that's probably what the majority of people are doing. Let's talk about the pros and cons to that. Okay, so the pros of that are that you aren't spooking people off from day one with price, but I think there's more to that than most people fully appreciate. So let's put a pin in that for a second. But yeah, you're not like scaring people off who don't understand the value of what you do yet, don't understand your credentials. They just see some number and disappear forever, right? It's not quite how it works, but I think that's how some people think it is. So we'll call that a pro for now. That can actually be a con, that you aren't scaring people off. So some of these are going to overlap, but that's one thing that people like about kind of holding their prices close to their chest, is that they feel like they're not scaring people away. Okay. The other thing that I think people like about holding the prices back until the end of the process, or towards the end of the process, is that they focus more, right? Or they plan to focus more on the solution, the plan of attack to help people, the pain points, all of those kind of things, right? So that they feel like they're keeping their focus off the product and more on the problem and the solution, which is good. That's a win. You want to be able to keep people's focus and attention on those things, because that's where the true value is, and you need them comparing the value to the outcome and the result and the transformation, as opposed to like, well, how many videos do I get? How many calls do I get? That's not where you want people that's not where you want people focusing their attention, because it's not in their best interest in terms of making decisions, because that's not where the value is ultimately derived from. It's what that information can then do for them. Okay, so that's another pro. I think the other pro is that they feel like it just makes things flow. They get more lead flow, more volume through, like I said before, because people aren't kind of being presented with this price hurdle along the way. So they probably feel like they get more volume through with that methodology. And I guess by then extension of that, they feel there's more control in the process, in terms of they can keep people moving through the process, thinking about the problem, thinking about the solution, as opposed to thinking simply about the investment, right? I think the other thing that people like about the holding the price back thing is that they can get people sold on the brand, the product, the offering, right? And then if they get them sold on that, assuming it's physically within someone's budget, I think they feel like they can increase price elasticity and eliminate the pricing objection in a lot more cases, right? There's probably more to it, but they're the ones that immediately spring to mind for me that I think people like about kind of holding the price back. And I think they also like the fact that they don't have to talk about price, which for some people is an uncomfortable thing to do. I've never really fallen into that bucket, but I think some people prefer to just not talk about price, right? And I don't know if that comes down in some cases. I think it comes down to them maybe having some monetary mindset roadblocks, but yeah, I think it's just easier for them not to talk about price, and it's just a thing that they don't need to mention. Rather, they can talk about the pains and the problems and the solutions and their story and all that kind of stuff. That's right. So I think they're the main reason that folks like the holding the price back. Let's talk about, on the flip side of that, let's talk about some cons of holding the price back. You open yourself up to having more people in your sales process, going through your sales process, who may not be able to afford your thing, right? And there might be a percentage of people who say they can't afford it, but actually can. So, you run the risk of maybe pushing them kind of one way or another. But yeah, you're ultimately going to end up with more people who have, because price is subjective, right? Like there's a common question that people ask is like, do you have the funds available to invest? And it's like, well, yeah, but like that's different. Like what that is for me might be completely different to somebody else based on budget, preparedness to spend money, immediate access to funds, all the, like monthly cash flow, all those kind of things. So it can be quite subjective. So without explicitly stating prices, you might have people who kind of more happily just like float through the process, take up your team's time, jump on a call. Maybe they jump on 2 calls if you're doing triage calls. And if this price thing never comes up, they kind of float through the process, and then they get to the end and you're like, oh, it's 10 grand. And they're just like, I'm sorry, but there is no possible way that I can physically spend that money. In which case, you've just spent all this time with the lead. Admittedly, part of it is leveraged. But yeah, you are opening yourself up more to getting people come through who may not be on the same level or wavelength as you in terms of pricing and what is reasonable or what they can afford vis-a-vis what you charge. So that's definitely a con. I think it frustrates people as well. I think there's a lot of frustration in the market, especially at the moment, about the lack of transparency. I think there's a lot of people that would just prefer to know the price, right? And the salesperson would say, well, the price is irrelevant until we know if it's a good fit and all that kind of stuff. And I get it, but I think people just want to know like what the investment is. I'm seeing more and more of that coming through in the market at the moment. Like I said, I feel like there's a bit of a shift towards that. So I think that can be a point of frustration for people, which can actually cause them as well to hesitate in some cases going through the sales process, because they're like, well, I have no fucking idea what this thing is going to cost. So they might hold back, right? It might actually be nowhere near as much as what they're building up in their head. So I think the lack of transparency around price can cause some confusion and undesirable effects in either direction, right? And it's just the inverse of the other stuff that we spoke about, right? There's pros to this, there's cons to this as well. I think the other major problem is that when you present your price at the very, very last minute, right? People haven't had time to kind of chew on it, right? And to think about it and to justify it to themselves, right? Which I think people feel like that's a benefit, like get people when they're all kind of hot and excited and hyped up. But for me, if you're selling something for like $500 and you want, like, it's a curiosity driven, more information based purchase. But if you're selling higher end stuff for $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, $25,000, that's not the type of buyer or cut. You don't want you want people to be excited, but you don't want them buying something of that value off hype, because it's not going to last. You want them to be like 100% in. And so for me the pricing strategy doesn't align with the ultimate kind of purchase that you want, which is what, I think a lot of people who face higher refund rates and chargeback rates are because they're selling when people are all really hyped up and excited, and then give it 48 hours and they're like, oh shit, what have I done? Whereas when you present the price earlier on and you give people more time to think about it, the ones that come through and have been sitting with the price for a few days, even a few weeks, hell, even a few months, if you communicate your pricing with your audience in your content, there's no surprises. They've had an extended period of time to think about it. And when they make that decision, it's not off the back of a 30-minute call where they were with a salesperson who was really, really good at what they do, and they got all excited and they got them to pull their credit card out, and then 2 days later they're like, oh shit, right? So I think the longer that someone can sit with the price, the person that then spends that money, there's a lot less risk that they regret it down the track, right? Which I think is good from a seller's perspective, because it means you're working with people who 150% want to be there and are comfortable with the investment and are prepared to do what it takes and all those kind of things. So I think you can get a higher quality of customer, and I don't mean quality in terms of the individual. I just mean you get people who are there for the right reasons, and they've thought through something logically, and they're not just buying off hype and on a whim. The other thing that happens when people have had longer to think about your price is the sale actually becomes easier when push comes to shove. Because what a lot of people face is they go through this whole sales process, and then they drop the price, and that's where, boom, all the static and the objections and the pushback start to come from, right? And it can be directly in relation to the price, but it can also be the flow-on effect of trust, not seeing the value, all those kind of things. I need to talk to my partner. I need to think about it. A lot of that's driven off price. If they knew the price 3 weeks ago and they've been consuming your stuff, then they come through your sales process and they see the offer. It's now no surprise, right? So in a lot of cases, the earlier they see the price, the longer they've had to think about it, you're actually eliminating the price objection in advance. And you can do that with the other objections that pop up as well by touching on them in your content, okay? You can handle the objections in advance. So by being more transparent about your pricing earlier on, you're actually handling the pricing objection. It's not to say you're going to completely eliminate it, but you're actually handling the pricing objection earlier on by just putting it on the table, because then there's no surprises for people. If they're going through the process, they can't be like, oh, well, it's more than I thought. And it's like, well, I've been talking about it for the last 3 weeks and you've been consuming the posts and you've interacted with them, and that's why we're here. So there's some thoughts and some pros and cons as to the two different strategies, the benefits and the downside of each. Like I said, I don't have a you must do this approach with my clients. Some of them hold back their price and some of them are more public with it. Like I said, we are, as an industry, I think, continuing to move more and more towards more transparency and more openness about price, which overall I think is a great thing. I talk about my prices pretty freely and openly. From time to time, that'll cause people to go, oh, well, because we increase our prices, that'll cause them to go, oh, well, I thought it was 15 grand, and I'm like, well, no, it's 20 grand now. And then they say, well, I saw this thing, and it's like, yeah, but it's since gone up. So from time to time you'll get that, but then again, they know the price. It's back on them to make an informed, logical decision. Is it still worth it to them or not? So you can take that for what it's worth, where I feel like the industry is heading, and decide if it's something that you want to integrate into your marketing, like getting your prices on the table earlier, right? The other thing that can work really, really well is if you're selling like a front end $1,000 offer, if you can pre-frame your pricing in your front end thing for the back end thing, or even anchor a higher price, when the time comes to try and ascend people, you're making your life way easier when it comes to that pitch, because they've had more time to think about it, right? They've had more time to process it, more time to justify it to themselves, right? Because when you see something that you want, like a car or whatever, initially when you see the price, you might be like, oh crap, like I'd never pay that. But if you really like it, you start to see it everywhere. And then over time, we're really, really good at justifying to ourselves the things that we want. The same goes here. So without kind of leading you one way or the other, because I genuinely do think it comes down to the individual business, I lean more towards the openness and the transparency on the pricing. I prefer that as a buyer. The other benefit that I didn't mention is that when you're trying to sell to people who have more money than time, right, and you want to deal with people who are prepared to just spend, those types of customers I've found want the additional transparency. They get frustrated and pissed off by the, being held back, and they've got to jump through all these hoops. People who spend big money and will spend it quickly, I've found, prefer the transparency. Okay, so it depends on your market, depends on your pricing and all those kind of things, but that's another thing to really think about integrating. Okay, this video's run a little bit longer than I wanted, but I wanted to have the discussion with you guys about the pros and the cons to each, so that you can think about it and integrate it into your business. So I've told you some of the pros and cons. I've told you where I feel like the market's heading. I've told you a little bit just now about the types of people that I think prefer one over the other. So I'll leave it in your hands to decide which is the best fit for you. You can get in touch with us if you want help with all this, packaging up your offer, structuring your offer in the right way, including your pricing strategies, and we can help you out with that if you're interested. But we have offers that range from $1,000 up to $30,000 at the moment. So there's some pricing transparency for you. It depends on your situation, which one would be a fit for you. So I don't have one number to tell you, but we have stuff in that range. Okay. So you can get in touch if you decide that you might be interested in working together. And that's it for this one. So think about it. Think about what fits best for you, your offer, your brand, the type of brand that you want to have in terms of, do you want to be more transparent about that thing, or do you prefer the benefits of kind of holding that information back because you like what it does for your sales process? Okay, something to think about, and then go and implement, and I'll talk to you all in the next one. Cheers.